Good morning. My name is David Rouse. I teach interdisciplinary studies here in the core division at Champlain College, and I am going to be talking about one aspect of our Core 260 Democracies course this afternoon. This aspect is media issues. It is one of the central parts of our study of democracies, and in particular I'm going to be addressing some concerns that I and some of my colleagues have had concerning our textbook, John Street's Mass Media, Politics and Democracy. This is a really good book. It has lots of good ideas, lots of good research, but it is not always easy for our students to absorb and fully understand for several reasons. One is that it's really dense. Two is that it assumes a high level of education and cultural literacy. And three, many of Street's points relate to the British media instead of the American media. So to try to get at some of these concerns, I supplement these readings with exercises that are designed to provide a better and broader understanding of some of Street's ideas. I'm going to be talking about three of these exercises I use in class here in this presentation. The first works in conjunction with the first two chapters of Street's book. Chapter 1 is called Political Bias. Chapter 2 is called Telling Tales, the Reporting of News. I simply find a news article, preferably one from a nice biased source, and then go over it with the class, trying to point out the tricks and techniques of biased media reporting. For example, connotative language, leading headlines, emphasis or de-emphasis or omission of certain facts, images or quotations designed to present one side or the other of an issue more or less positively or sympathetically. I like to use an article from a news source called Raw Story, and this article discusses efforts by a Texas school board to make public education more conservative through the selection of some textbooks instead of others. Let's see. Students tend to like a hands-on exercise with a puzzle component, and the fact that this is a liberal source addressing a conservative project gives it something of a two-sided approach. If anyone is curious about the particular article, get in touch with me. I'd be happy to share it with you. Second activity I use also goes with Street's chapters 1 and 2. I call this one the media bias exercise. If we could look over at the PowerPoint, please. I ask the students to pretend that they are a public relations officer whose firm has been hired by a series of clients to try to improve their public profile. The students are responsible for creating a short news blurb designed to present one side of an issue more positively than the other. I ask them, how would their presentation sound? How would they convey to their audience that they fully sympathize with one side more than the other? Do they use specific words with accepted connotations? Do they use the emphasis, de-emphasis, or omission of certain facts? Do they provide more info or more positive info about one side than the other? Do they provide quotations, for example, that show their speaker's intelligence or rationality, or sometimes lack thereof? So the first group gets this one. A group of Wall Street bankers and lawyers have hired your firm to try to counter the negative publicity of the Occupy Wall Street movement in a way that improves the public's perception of the 1%, so that mainstream America won't support the occupiers' demands. A second group would get this one. Your firm has been contacted by a group of coyotes who are tired of seeing Wiley portrayed as stupid, brutish, and predatory in his relationship with the Roadrunner. How can you summarize the typical events of one cartoon episode in a way that is more sympathetic to poor, misunderstood Wiley? Group 3 would get this one. Your firm has been commissioned to write the text of a monument to be built at the Montana site of the Battle of the Little Bighorn. On one side of the monument will be a plaque memorializing the U.S. soldiers killed in the battle, designed to make visitors proud of the soldiers and their efforts. While on the other side will be a plaque commemorating the Sioux and Cheyenne soldiers, also designed to make them look as good and as sympathetic as possible. In just 2 to 3 sentences, how would you phrase these two plaques? Our fourth group, a group representing an alternative religion, has asked your firm to help them rewrite a famous fairy tale in a more modern, politically correct manner. The main idea here is to make the witch look more human and more relatable. Choose either Hansel and Gretel or Snow White and compose a brief paragraph explaining why the witch isn't so bad and how whatever she does with good reason. If you prefer, you could instead work with Cinderella from the perspective of the stepsisters or Goldilocks from the perspective of the three bears. And our final group, SeaWorld has just hired your firm to fight back against a negative PR campaign claiming that the exhibited animals are exploited and cruelly mistreated, and that zoos in general are bad places. Write a brief press release explaining why what SeaWorld does is good for the world and therefore shouldn't be shut down or boycotted. I generally use groups of 3 to 5 students to work with this assignment, and they tend to like it because it asks them to create their own material presenting their own sense of what is biased, what is leading material. So again, it's hands-on and it gives them an opportunity to adopt a different voice and practice some of these techniques. The third exercise that I like to use is designed to accompany Chapter 5 of the Street textbook, State Control and State Propaganda, and Chapter 6, Conglomerate Control, Media Moguls, and Media Power. For this activity, I introduced them to Sonoma State University's Project Censored, which is a campaign designed to draw attention or to publicize stories that Project Censored believes are either unreported or underreported by the mainstream media. Again, I take groups of 3 to 5 students. I go to the Project Censored webpage. This is their publication from 2004, but they have, as I said, a website. It's projectcensored.org, and they list the top 25 most censored stories of any given year. So I assign one of these top 25 stories to each group of 3 to 5 students, and I task them with, in class, briefly if they can, researching and then reporting back to the class on 3 specific questions. 1, what is this actual story and why would it be significant to a citizen living in a democracy? 2, is the story in fact unreported or underreported by the mainstream media? And 3, why might this be unreported? Why might a news outlet have decided to overlook or ignore or bury a certain story? What conflicts might arise? What embarrassing questions might be asked? The idea is to get them not just to look at the ways that bias is presented, but some of the reasons behind it. This also tends to go over pretty well with the students, partly because, pardon me, it gives the students a good idea of the connections between media and politics between politics and business. And this is Street's main point, particularly in Chapter 6. That concludes my review of these exercises I use to try to help convey some of Street's ideas in his Mass Media, Politics, and Democracy textbook. If anybody has any questions about any of these things or wants to discuss them or has any desire to see the actual documents or anything along those lines, you know where to reach me. Thank you very much.